Dalit tribal organizations have called for a 14-hour Bharat Bandh today against the Supreme Court's decision to exclude the scheduled caste from creamy layer reservations. Now, caste is clearly the BJP's Achilles heel in 2024. In the Lok Sabha elections in UP, the BJP lost nearly 29 seats, partly because a Congress SP rumor began doing the rounds that the BJP would end reservations. On the 20th of August, the union government withdrew a UPSC advertisement calling for 45 lateral entry positions into the IAS because the opposition said no reservations had been announced. Now, there are elections this year in 4 states, Maharashtra, Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir and Jharkhand, and of course Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir being a union territory. The Supreme Court has made valid observations on the benefits of reservations going to a select few. Then why has the BJP not been able to counter this false narrative that the opposition has been spreading? And also, are we seeing a Mandal agitation 2.0 building up? What can and what should the government do? What is the BJP thinking? Joining me to discuss this are Mr. K Malhotra, former Law Secretary to the Government of India, Mr. Banuchandar Nagarajan, Policy Advisor and Political Analyst, and in the studio at News9 Plus here with me is my colleague Ashok Bagaria. Ashok, BJP is walking into a caste minefield, you think, in 2024? You know, minefield is something where you don't see the mines, right? But you know there's a minefield out there, so you tread with caution. How do you cross a minefield? Tread with caution.
This is a really dense minefield if
Yes.
you were to look at it. And the best thing politically is to avoid it.
Right.
You cannot get into a minefield and start diffusing those
Yes,
trigger points.
absolutely.
So as far as the Bharatiya Janata Party and this caste controversy that has been brewing since April 2024, because it was in April that the Congress and the Samajwadi Party came up with a narrative that the BJP wants to secure 400 seats in the Lok Sabha elections, primarily with the idea to change the constitution and do away with the reservation policy, which is enshrined and integrally a part of the Constitution of India. Now, that did create a kind of a scare psychosis amongst the voters, especially from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and even the OBCs, because what we witnessed in some constituency was a very humbling defeat for the Bharatiya Janata Party.
Absolutely.
Let's actually even take the case of Ayodhya.
Yes.
Ayodhya is one particular seat where the OBCs voted against the Bharatiya Janata Party en masse, and the BJP was, forget any other seats, the BJP was so assured that if we can lose anything, but we will never lose Ayodhya. But
Right.
there they had to eat a humble pie.
Yes.
Now, this controversy was triggered then. Now, what has added more fuel to the fire
Yes.
is this August 1st judgment of the Supreme Court of India, where the Supreme Court was called on to
Right.
decide a very tricky question, whether there can be some communities within the scheduled caste which can be given preference in reservations, and this was a move. There was a law made by the Punjab government. So the Supreme Court was called to answer that. The Supreme Court ruled and said yes, affirmatively, that it can be done. But it did not stop there. 4 of the 7 judges who were part of the bench said, look, it is time that we have this idea or the concept of creamy layer, which the Supreme Court evolved in the Indira Sahni case, should be imported even to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe reservations, and the communities and castes who were benefiting from it should be excluded from the fold of reservations.
Right, absolutely, and that's a landmark judgment, given how sensitive the caste issue has been, and clearly that explains why the government has gone slow on that. But Mr. Malhotra, I want to ask you this question: why has the government put this very contentious issue of the creamy layer on the back burner? What are the issues of implementing this? This was meant to be a state-by-state implementation. Ashok, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But they've kind of gone on the back foot on this one. Mr. Malhotra, tell us what the government is thinking when it put this whole issue on the back burner. How long can it keep doing this?
Thank you, Sandeep, for inviting me in this very important discussion, because today Bharat Bandh has also been called on this particular issue, on which the Supreme Court has given its judgment and laid down certain new norms which are not existing as on today, either in the policy of the government or in the constitution. Now, all of us understand that this age-old caste system in India is responsible for the origination of the reservation system in our country. And this system is governed by the policies of the government as well as by provision of the constitution. And the historical injustice which has been done to some class, some castes, I mean, that was incorporated, and the constitution framers were, I think, wise enough to make a specific provision of the constitution and leaving the detail of it to the government as to how best it should be done. Any political party, including the parties in power today, have used and exploited this particular system for the purposes of their vote bank. I'll not go into that issue, but I'll be confining myself only to the policies of the government and the developments which have taken place right from independence time to date. On different occasions, right from 1951, the Supreme Court has given various judgments. Ashok was mentioning about the Indira Sani judgment,
Yes.
which I think was a landmark judgment in which the socially and economically backward sections of the society were also given recognition in relation to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, and reservation was made for them also. And later on also in 2002 also the Supreme Court has given a judgment, in 2022, the Supreme Court has given a judgment whereby they have said that the reservation system is in existence for the last 75 years. Time has come when we should review it, whether it should continue in the same form or a different form need to be adopted. In addition to that, by way of an amendment in the Constitution, the socially and economically backward sections of the society were given 10% reservation, which again became a subject matter of challenge, and the Supreme Court has given a verdict on that. And while giving that verdict by a decision of 6-1 in the latest judgment given on 1st of August, Supreme Court has said that certain sections of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes who are enjoying the benefits of this particular reservation, and they have enjoyed it for a longer time.
Yes.
There are people within that caste and that society probably who have not been given that kind of benefit, and today the benefit is being extended only to those who have already taken advantage of this particular benefit reservation. So I think in that context, the Supreme Court judgment is looking at the reservation from a progressive angle.
Yes.
The fact remains, when the provision was originally made in the Constitution, the reservation was only for 10 years.
Right.
After that, every 10 years it has been extended by way of an amendment in the Constitution. Therefore, the development which have taken place from 1950 to date, changing the scenario of reservation as to how it should be done, for whom it should be done. Many time amendments have been made for political consideration. We know it, all political parties have done it. Take, for example, the reservation in promotion,
Yes.
which was not the original concept. But by way of policy, the government amended the Constitution because the Supreme Court has not supported it. They amended the Constitution and made reservation. Even with regard to socially and economically backward society, section of the society, in 1992, in Indira Gandhi's case, Indira Sani's case, it was said that this reservation can be done. But then the Constitution was amended and the amendment has been made, which has been upheld by the Supreme Court now. So taking that scenario, I think this is an evolving process. And in the social and economic changes in the Indian structure and Indian society which has taken place, I think this dynamism has to come.
Right.
And a time has come when the system should be reviewed. Government came out with the policy of lateral entry. This is not a new concept.
Not at all.
Lateral entry has been there in
It's been there from the 1950s. Yeah, but that's a question. I'm going to bring in Banuchandar Nagarajan on this. Banuchandar, there are a lot of these decisions were taken in the time of the second term of the Modi government as well, like lateral entry, for instance. They went ahead with it in 2018. There was no opposition, so to speak. But now, you think the government has become extra cautious? It's like treading on eggshells, literally crossing a minefield. Every time there's a caste question that comes up, it exits the minefield. It doesn't even contest it. There have been number of instances that I just mentioned. And while the Supreme Court is correct in what it said, it's a progressive question that they've raised. Now is not the time for caste questions, to reframe one of Prime Minister Modi's statements on the war in Ukraine, right? This is something that you don't want to touch at this moment, you know, given how sensitive the political equations are, especially with your allies. You need them for your support. Is this what Modi 3.0 is going to look like, Banuchandar, from now to 2029?
See, in the last few weeks, you can see all the three pillars of our democratic republic acting out, and it is you see the churning there.
Yes.
The Supreme Court perhaps felt that the current scheme of things is producing its own winners and losers, and there are certain communities, for example, say the Valmiki community, which was mentioned, which have not been able to reap the benefits of the current system. So it suggested a few tweakings. A point that a couple of the speakers missed was, there are two parts to this. One is an observation, and second is a judgment. The creamy layer bit is an observation. Okay.
Yes.
So, and after the observation was made, the SC, ST MPs of the parliament went to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister said that this is not part of a judgment, so we are not going to do anything about it.
Right.
The second part is the one which said that the state governments can do subcategorization, but they also impose boundary conditions, right? They said that you cannot have 100% of caste in a particular thing, and also you have to have quantitative basis on what you are doing. So I think we see that all the three pillars of our democratic republic are working, and it's good to see the Supreme Court taking an initiative here, because it perhaps felt that the current political system, it's very hard for political parties to take up social justice issues, right? Because there are so many players, and it's a coalition government. So coming to the bit that you're asking, Sandeep, is that, see, regarding the lateral business, I think perhaps the government is like willing to lose a few battles to win the big war. If you look at the Prime Minister's Independence Day speech, he spoke about one nation, one election in the common civil code, which is now the secular civil code. So he perhaps wants to preserve political capital to execute those. And this 45 appointments that were supposed to be made to lateral entries, withdrawing that perhaps was a smaller law that.
Absolutely. Win, skirt all the minor battles, but, look at the big war. But the war being, as Banuchandar mentioned, the Uniform Civil Code, which has now been rebranded, and of course the one nation, one election. But, when it comes back to caste, Ashok, it's such an inalienable part of our political discourse. Now, given the fact that you have so many state elections, literally you have a roller coaster of state elections from now right up to 2029. Where is this caste equation going to be in this whole thing? You think it's going to be what you mentioned at the beginning of the discussion? Stay away from the minefield. Don't even go there. Let things go as they've been proceeding.
Look, it will be very difficult for the Bharatiya Janata Party to entirely keep away from the controversy.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, what you're really looking at is you're trying to win elections.
Yes.
And when you're winning elections, you are looking at the vote share or the number of people who are casting votes for your particular party.
Right.
Now, everybody is for a long time shying away from doing a caste census.
Yes.
It's time, actually, the country needs to know that what exactly is the composition of the castes within the country.
Right.
How many upper castes are there? How many other castes are there? How many scheduled caste, scheduled tribe? And if you look at it, probably everybody at the back of their mind knows that the number of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and OBCs has over the last few decades risen phenomenally, and they have a big say in who wins the election. So, as you rightly pointed out, that in the next, in the coming months, there are at least 4 assembly elections that we are looking at. Then we have Delhi elections, then we have Bihar elections, then subsequently elections in the southern states, where again caste plays a very important factor, because these are the people, these are the voters who are going to vote for you. Now, the Bharatiya Janata Party, the biggest challenge for Bharatiya Janata Party is to create a parallel narrative. Either they can build a parallel narrative on their position as far as the castes are concerned, or reservations or affirmative action is concerned, or probably go on the defensive and tell the members of these castes and community who enjoy the benefits of affirmative action that even if Bharatiya Janata Party comes to power, nothing will happen to the reservation policy, which is an inherent part of the constitution. So the Bharatiya Janata Party will have to go back to the drawing board,
Yes.
decide what is the strategy that they
Right.
have to adopt in the days
Absolutely,
to
you hit the nail on the head with that, Ashok. The fact that you remember back in 1989 when the BJP stepped on the temple, stepped up the pressure on the temple movement because the Mandal agitation had begun, and they had to balance, Mandal with Kamandal, as they called it. But and it's back to that in 2024 because if you look at it from the party's point of view, the Ram Mandir has not delivered the kind of dividends that they wanted to, and they're clearly looking at something that you want to get a lot of, win a lot of elections with. You need that one big issue, and what is it going to be? Is it going to be a caste census? One really doesn't know. But the fact is that, as Ashok pointed out, that the BJP is going to be looking at creating a new narrative to balance this minefield that they're faced with, the caste minefield that the opposition has laid out for them in the months ahead. And of course, in the last couple of days, that minefield has been playing heavily on the minds of the party, the BJP, as it heads into elections. But I want to thank my co-panelists, Banuchandar Nagarajan, Mr. Malhotra, and Ashok Bagaria for joining us on this discussion on the BJP 3.0's caste minefield.